This is Crystal Craven, a singer, a songwriter, and a worship leader who is passionate about sharing what God inspires. And this is your weekly devotional. So we are still in this section of Luke 11, and we are talking about demonic possession. So we will be reading from Luke 11, 24 through 26. And this is where Jesus said, "When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest. And finding none, it says, 'I will return to my house from which I came.' And when it comes, it finds the house swept and put in order. Then it goes and brings 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first." Now, this may seem to have changed topic, from Jesus's words, but it really is continuing in his thought train. He had, literally been just talking to the Pharisees about casting out demons, and the discussion went to which kingdom he was from, and those who don't gather with him scatter. So now he's talking about a person who has been freed from demon possession, and it gets themselves, they may get themselves cleaned up, so to speak, after they are freed from the demon possession, but not necessarily filled with God, which then just opens themselves up to even worse possession later. If they are not with Jesus, they are against him, which is something he had said earlier that we had studied, and therefore they are then prime real estate for the kingdom of darkness, since they are not filled with light. Now, I want to preempt the rest of this devotional by clearly stating that Christians, so followers of Jesus who are filled with the Holy Spirit, cannot be possessed by demons. Because if someone has the Spirit of God dwelling inside of them, they are sealed as set apart to God, and Satan has literally no power or control over them. They are not of this world. They are living in it as a light of the world. And just as darkness cannot penetrate light, since darkness is literally the absence of light, so too is a Christ follower who is in the light cannot have the demons of the kingdom of darkness dwelling in them simultaneously. So just simply put, being bought and paid for by Christ, followers of Christ means we belong to God and are not the possession of Satan, therefore cannot be possessed by demons. Now, this issue of the state of a person is a really important one to know, even if you are a Christian and therefore can't be possessed by any demons. Why? Well, because you never know when you may come across a demon-possessed person, or even someone who might be dabbling in things that are, inadvertently, or I guess unknowingly opening themselves to demon possession. Now, if you were to come in contact with a demon-possessed person, which is more common in some ministries, like, serving maybe the homeless community, for example, casting out a demon would only be half of the battle. Because after they're free from possession, they still have sin to deal with. And if they aren't willing to surrender to Christ and receive salvation, then they are open to being possessed later on in the future in a worse state than they were before. Now, we must remember the context in which Jesus says these things, because Jesus is saying that it is not enough to simply cast out a demon from a person, that they must be filled with him in order to not be like a clean vacancy that invites demons back in. Now, previous to this, if you recall, Jesus talked about the strong man and the stronger man. And Jesus is the stronger man who has authority to cast out demons, and he has the authority to completely redeem anyone who accepts his salvation. And by these verses, as we read, it appears that demons are at rest when possessing a person, and then they're not at rest when they're not. So they are looking for vacancies in which they can dwell. Now, we know that a follower of Jesus cannot be possessed by demons, but what about non-believers? Does that mean that they're free game for demon possession? Well, that's not exactly an easily answered question, right? That's not something that we have like a Bible verse that tells us. But if God allows mankind to have free will and doesn't force salvation upon us in which we would be filled with his Spirit, the Holy Spirit, then it's reasonable to think that God would not allow Satan to overpower our free will with demon possession either. A person, however, becomes available for demon possession when they open the door to demonic activities. So messing around with tarot cards or Ouija boards, occult practices, or things like that, these are all activities in which a person uses their free will to open that door to the demonic spirits. And we do need to warn people about this, especially young children that may not even realize the heaviness and the weight that comes with what they might think are games, because they shouldn't be dabbling in these things. No one should. It is very serious. So ultimately, what is Jesus's point here? Well, the point is, if someone is freed from demonic possession, they also need to be freed from the bondage of their sin to be truly free. And the only way to do that is through Jesus. So I will leave you with John 8:36, which says, "So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." For blogs, written devotionals, and originally written songs, visit crystalcravenmusic.com, and that is Crystal with a K.